So I'm on a mission to recreate a better Snow White dress than whatever the hell this is supposed to be. And I just finished the skirt.
Just whistle while you work.
The first thing that I made for this was the corset, and I'm a cheapskate. So I didn't really make it, I just bought a really cheap one on Vinted, and then I switched out the cheap plastic boning for white steel boning. Bone! Then I also needed a hoop skirt, and I made this one a couple of years ago, so it will do. It's pink and it's the perfect size for what I have in mind. I did sew hooks to both the corset and the hoop skirt to make it all a bit more solid.
Just whistle while you work.
I am too cheap to buy pattern paper,
I generally try to avoid spending any money at all.
so I glued all of the PowerPoints that I studied in June together. Gluing them together was definitely more fun than studying them. Once I created a piece of paper big enough, I cut half a circle skirt. The length of the circle skirt was 5 centimeters, that's around 2 inches, I think, longer than my hoop skirt. Then I used this pattern to cut 5 half circle skirts. I cut them out of organza-like fabrics. I say organza-like because I thrifted all of these fabrics and I have no idea what they're actually made of. I do love that the fabrics are see-through. This way I can just tape my pattern to the floor and lay the fabric on top, what is a lot easier to do than the other way around. Then I had a lot of panels and I zigzag stitched around all of them to protect them. And then I sewn the panels who belonged together until I had 5 half circle skirts. I want to sew all of these skirts into one waistband for general convenience. And I added the green layer on top. This has a reason that you will find out later. Ooh, exciting! Then I cut a simple waistband with a width of 10 centimeters, that's around 4 inches. And I attached this to the skirts. I also added 2 buttonholes next to each other on the waistband. This will create an easy closing system because this way I can thread a rope through it and make it bigger or smaller.
Just whistle while you work.
I started the first layer of the actual skirt, the gold layer that you saw in the beginning, by taping even a more paper together. Because for this one, I'm going to make a half circle skirt pattern, but I'm going to make the waist 3 times too big. And people who sew or own a dog will recognize the following situation.
Do ba 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 do boo do a boo ba do boo boo ba.
So I cut out the pattern and burned the leftovers, and then I wanted to cut the golden fabric, but I realized that it was just a little bit too small, but it had this sewn edge, so I opened that up and then I cut the pattern twice before I burned it. I'm not a pyromaniac, I just don't have the space to store large patterns. Then I sewn the 2 pieces together, and this way I created a skirt that was 3 times too big for Brenda. Brenda is the name of my dress form. This isn't a calculation mistake. I made it 3 times too big on purpose so I could gather it. This way I have a gathered half circle skirt, and I just love the way that this looks. I'm not going to put this into a waistband yet because I want to put it together with the second layer of the skirt.
Just whistle while you work.
Then I ran out of PowerPoint paper, so I destroyed the book. I'm not trying to make a statement or offend anyone. What is difficult in these times? We deep cleaned the house a couple of weeks ago, and this was one of the things that we wanted to throw away. So I decided to give it one last life as my train pattern. To make this particular train pattern, you first need to cut off a circle skirt pattern that is long enough to reach the floor. I also burned the leftovers of this pattern. And then I taped even more paper together. And you need to make sure that this has the same width as your circle skirt, but the length has to be the size that you want your train to be. The rest of the process of making a train pattern is relatively easy. First, lay your pattern in the corner and trace it onto the paper. Then move it to the end of the pattern paper and trace it again. After that, you just need to connect the lines at the under edge. It's best to connect this in a curve, and ta-da! You have a train pattern. If my explanation was not completely clear, fear not. In a couple of weeks, I'm planning to make a detailed video on how to make train skirts. Then I taped my train fabric to the floor and I laid my 2 pieces of lace upon it. This was too big to cut it out of one piece, so I had to order a second piece of the red lace. And I spent around 10 minutes getting the placement all right. Always pay attention to fabric placements. And then I cut it out and I sewn it together, and now I have a train. A fabric train, not an actual train. I don't have the money to buy an actual train. Then I was thinking of a way to finish the train and I decided to give it a golden lining. So I cut the leftovers of the golden fabric into a very long strap, and then I turned this into a bias tape and I sewn the bias tape to the edge of the enormous train. Then I attached the red lace to the golden layer and I also folded and fixed up the fronts. Then I gave the lining and the rest of the skirt a good press with my best friend, the ironer, and I created a waistband in the exact same way as the petticoat. And the very last step of finishing this skirt was hemming the edge of the golden fabric. I decided to finish it with hemming tape because I prefer this to sewing it. Both hemming methods take forever, but I prefer the hemming tape. And this way I finish my skirt. I hope to finish the full dress before the end of the year, but that might be a little bit steep in my planning. Anyway, thank you for watching. Let me know what you think of the skirt in the comments below. Bye!